We've strapped our kids to this conveyor belt
Right.
where they have to be answerable. And I questioned myself as a mom because it was something I assumed. Of course, my kids have to go to college to be successful in life. Of course, this is what you do. But to have them so narrowly defined by a grade or a test score or even a piece of paper really had me challenge myself. And there's a lot of people out there coming up with new ways where we look at portfolios rather than looking at single numbers, transcripts, because that says nothing.
My mission is to empower women to fearlessly embrace and live their authentic lives.
The pressures on our kids today are immense. They are working and testing to meet standards, piling on volunteer work, leadership roles, AP classes, the list goes on, just to get into their college dream. Yet for many, it ends in rejection, leaving them questioning their self-worth and unsure of what college sweatshirts to even wear for their senior photos, which is such a big deal. We have all seen the toll this takes and the pressure that our kids are under. But with all this hard work, are they genuinely learning or are they just meeting requirements? Let's just think about that for a minute. And what about the price we are all paying? Family time was sacrificed for endless tournaments, expensive tutors, internships, AP exams, all to help build that top-tier portfolio. Their childhoods, one filled with play and exploration, are increasingly consumed by relentless demands for achievement, often leading to mental distress that can last a lifetime. Then after college graduation, many young adults find themselves in careers they never wanted in the first place, burned by student debt and feeling unfulfilled. The inauthenticity of this path can lead to mental, emotional, and physical burnout. My guest today, Pam Roy, is on a mission to change this system. She believes in honoring our children's unique selves, allowing them to learn through experiences, and allowing them the freedom to explore beyond the rigid standards of traditional education. Through writing, films, and books, and initiatives, and mentorship, Pam advocates for meaningful education opportunities and community-based support to foster children's and young adults' mental health and well-being. She challenges our current one-size-fits-all school system and highlights the meaning-oriented philosophy of renowned psychiatrist Viktor Frankl. She believes the standard education model we use to prepare our children for life is not working well for us. In her book, Parenting from the Passenger Seat, How Our Children Develop Capabilities, Connections, and Meaningful Lives, she writes about parenting from a very different perspective and believe it's time for a shift. Pam, I am so honored to have you on Female Fluence. Thank you for being my guest today.
I am so honored to be your guest. I love the work you're doing, and it's so powerful that we have so many voices out there that are beginning to question really how we're raising our children and what kind of culture and environment we want to have for ourselves and our families.
Yes, it's very true. Well, Pam, tell us more about you. I know your resume is extensive, but tell me how you got to this point of your life, where you are today. How did you get here?
Really, I got here through my life experiences, as we all get to a certain point. I'm a proud 60, almost 65. Next week, I turn 65.
Oh, happy
So
early
I
birthday.
thank you. You know, I really came about because I was a late bloomer and an early achiever. So what that means is when I went to college, it was in that very intense era that women had to break the ceiling and go out there and really get in the men's world. And so I did that. I was a good student. I meandered, at the time. No one, college for all was not a thing. I dropped out of community college twice. I went to a state school, ended up at USC, getting a business degree, and then going into real estate consulting. And just doing the grind. I was very successful young, became a partner of a real estate consulting firm when I was 27. I opened their Washington, D.C. office. I had the car, the condo, the travel, and all of a sudden my body just was not, they called it irritable bowel or whatever.
Started
It was
talking
just,
to you, right? Your
yes,
body.
my body just was saying this is not the life. And I had always envisioned myself as a mom, always envisioned myself. But I was so busy pursuing this dream that was this trajectory that if I did this, then this would happen and I would be happy. And yet here I was with supposedly the dream, according to what the promise was, but it wasn't my dream. It wasn't who I was, and I didn't feel that I could really continue. So I actually quit my job with no other job. How's that?
A little
And
scary.
yeah, a little scary. I call myself a cliff jumper, and I've done that throughout my life, where it's just when I know that I am not on the right course, that I have to figure out a way, and I just kind of throw myself at the wind and see what happens. And I say follow the bouncing ball, and it always has, the road has always risen. And so anyway, so I did make time. I ended up getting married at 35 and having three beautiful daughters that are now 23, 25, and 27. And so I was an older parent. So having done that, I looked at raising my children a little differently. And really, this 40-year gap really showed me the difference in their ability to work, have time, and the mold that they were placed into, or they were expected to perform, to, tests, adult driven. I mean, where was their time to discover themselves and have time for nurturing relationships? So I really pushed back. I put my kids in alternative education. And then by high school, they wanted to go to a regular school.
Right.
And so they went to an intense independent school. And really there I began really seeing the mental, I saw it in my community all the time. We were having, of course, suicide was in the news, and all sorts of distress, eating disorders, people being diagnosed with learning disabilities. And I'm like, what's going on? So about the time my older daughter went to college and my two younger ones, because there was 3 and 4 years, they're very close in age, I was looking at doing something about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, we've strapped our kids to this conveyor belt
Right.
where they have to be answerable. And I questioned myself as a mom because it was something I assumed. Of course, my kids have to go to college to be successful in life. Of course, this is what you do. But to have them so narrowly defined by a grade or a test score or even a piece of paper, really had me challenge myself. But again, by that time, my kids are drinking the Kool-Aid, right? All their friends are doing it. It's what they want to do.
Yep.
And so off we all go. And my younger daughter, when she was a freshman, decided she wanted to go to an East Coast NYU for a summer program. And I thought, apply, let me know what's going on. And it turned out she wanted to go to see Justin Bieber, not really go for the academic or educational component.
Of course.
So it didn't work out for her. But what I did see was one of the first online school counseling master's degree. And that's really when my eyes really opened. So I had these years of experience as someone who had built businesses, got married to an entrepreneur, did a lot of investing. So I was seeing this shifting world, and I was seeing corporations, this hierarchical structure that used to accept, like, give us, your degree and come and that was what was required, to this flattening out and spoke looking for skills, and too many kids with the same degrees and not enough, and really being caught in the algorithm of being able to get a job and then thinking it's them. And this same business model applying to colleges, where the admissions was based on a number, and they didn't really see the students in most cases. So I began looking at this input for output mechanistic system. So here I am at 56 getting a master's degree, and part of it was an immersion period in New York, which I went to. And I had all these other students with me, many from economically disadvantaged,
Right.
where they're promising them the, this degree from this prestigious university would, of course, set them up. But they had undergraduate loans. And the cost of this course for 2 years was $81,000.
You're
So when
kidding.
you
Wow.
think of a school counseling degree, and then you think for 2 years you can't work, so there's what's called opportunity costs, right? So even if they
Right.
could earn 50,000 a year, that's $100,000 cost on top of,
Right.
and the median salary was 50,000. And as I'm a market researcher by background, and so began looking at this saying, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. At the same time, they're projecting this increased need for school counselors. We're seeing in the reality that they were hiring academic advisors more than they were hiring school counselors, and they only needed an AA degree
Oh,
or
okay.
security guards. So the budgets were going different, and everything again was to keep kids on this track. So I finished all my coursework, learned a lot about, too much information, the same thing. And I was, of course, as an older person, looking at this much differently. So I did a practicum here locally at San Clemente High School, and they had one school counselor, one part-time school counselor, and 7 academic advisors. And so this wonderful organization, Wellness and Prevention Center, was a nonprofit of social workers that were working in there. I was allowed to do my internship, and then really saw in the distress that was happening and the resources that really weren't available. Again, it was just this conveyor belt, kind of get them to the next grade, get them to the next thing, and then get them out. And as relational human beings, I know that is difficult. At the
Yeah.
same time, no experience in the real world. And I'm hearing of kids that, go through their degrees and then suddenly go out and actually get a job in that and hate what they're doing.
Exactly.
And I had this experience even with my daughters now in the early 20s. 2 of them live in New York, one lives in Dallas, and talking to their friends and going out to dinner. And there was like 12 of them at one point, I was counting. And really, there was only one that liked their job. Everybody, and they had high prestige, working for prestigious hotels and investment firms and news corporations. And it was like whoa, this was this promise. So all of this came together. A dear friend of mine, she was in NCL, Kara Cragen, said, Pam, why don't you start writing about this and start telling parents based on your business experience and your own experiences, as starting anything, and I'm thinking it was probably true for you too,
So
this,
scary.
yes, of being vulnerable. And really,
Yes.
I have such
That
power.
vulnerability. I mean, it's so real, but it's really scary to put yourself out there.
Yes.
I'm right there with you.
Yes, especially in opinions that were different
Right.
than what the prevailing wisdom was. And so for me, it was really, I thought, okay, well, I'll try. She developed my website, she handled my social media, and the blog just began to have responses that were really positive, of people feeling like, oh, wow, that's what I was feeling. I just,
Right.
I didn't have a validation of it, which is really what my book was all about. Was really not so much to convince anybody that might have a counter opinion and truly believe that they're doing the best they can for their child, which I completely respect and understand. But for those that were feeling uncomfortable, wondering how to get off this linear trajectory rocket ship we were all on. So anyway, so the blog ended up leading to multiple things, including an introduction to Viktor Frankl's grandson, Alex, where I really began to dive deep into meaning and purpose and how important that was to our mental health and well-being. And so when we try to make an artist a scientist or a scientist an artist, this standardized mold that we try and prepare our children for to fit into an economic structure,
Okay.
not based on who they are, is actually, look around. We have the sickest society. People are stressed out.
Yeah.
This is not even how humans are meant to live. We're meant to live in collaboration, not competition. We're meant to live with a responsibility to ourselves and to others, to the life we've been given. And so, anyway, I began doing the blog, met Alex. He introduced me to his partners who were doing the feature film of Man's Search for Meaning. And anyway, we ended up becoming partners saying, let's do impact films. So we have a series that's not yet released called Inside the Machine that takes a look at youth inside our high pressure education systems and what that does to them to be scheduled, you know, 18, 20 hours a day in many
Oh,
cases as they're performing, as they're doing adult driven activities. How do they discover? And at the same time, they have no perspective of this rapidly changing world. I call it the great disconnect. We're so disconnected in these systems from really what's happening and from the discovery of how we can contribute to this new
right.
changing world, right? Which is so
When will
critical.
these be released?
Well, hopefully next year. Hopefully
Okay.
next year finds a
So
platform
this
to
this is
distribute it.
through Straight Up
Straight
Impact,
up impact.
and
Yes. So
they're all women that are working
yes,
together,
we're a
which is I love it.
women-owned company. Yes, and so it really was to put out in films that inspire humanity about what's possible. So we have feature films like Man's Search for Meaning, Joseph Merrick, which is the last year of the elephant man's life, and someone who treats him like a human being and not a grotesque being, and and then this film Helldiver, which is a Japanese and American fighter pilot that crash and learn to find their common humanity, and very
Wow.
powerful. And then our series looks at youth inside the high pressure education, inside the healthcare system where they're overprescribed meds young,
So
without
true.
looking at context. And then the third one was on the foster care system, how quickly we, you know, uh, assume that a system can take care of our children better than the communities or the people. So it was really to raise the conversation. Again, it's not focusing on a specific things that say, okay, now what you need to do. But me
But
personally,
that's what we need. Like once you raise
yes,
that conversation, then
yes.
people become aware of the issue because it's all like hush hush and or people are afraid to express their real opinion.
Yes, no, it's true because they feel that they're so different and we have
Yeah.
this tremendous sense of wanting to belong. But for me, I wasn't so much interested in film as in the power of it to create the conversation. So I said, I'll do this film company if I can create initiatives related to it that could give people a place to go to be able to follow the shift or be a part of a community with other people doing the same thing. So I always say that my initiatives and the work that I do is related to here's this mechanistic, industrialized model of society that's really chewing us up and spitting us out. We have become the means to the end rather than having these systems or our work be a means to our end to support our families and be part of
Yeah.
our communities. And then the necessary human connectedness, I call it the mycelium, you know, it's the energy that each of us needs to be a part of a community and contribute who we are to that. So I say that my films, my initiatives, my books are the bridge. They just show this tiny part of what's possible if people choose. Now, again, I am very, very respectful and, in fact, enjoy conversations with people who have different
Of
perspectives.
course.
I was just speaking at a school yesterday that was talking with young parents, and it was interesting to hear the different perspectives because, of course, they're like, "How do I prepare my child?" And I was talking about what I talk about in the book is the most important thing we can do is actually model what we want the life to be for our children instead of focusing so much on what they are going to be or
Right.
how they have. It's a discovery process. Meaning is a discover. You can't invent it, you can't create it, you must find it for yourself based on who you uniquely are. 8 billion of us, not one of us the same, and there is a reason for that. And so on our education film, there was Sir Ken Robinson, who is an education icon. He has still, I think, the #1 TED Talk in the world. He became an executive producer, and I was so excited to be able to work with him and his daughter in kind of furthering this message. And unfortunately, during the filming, he developed cancer and passed away within 11 weeks. It was very fast and
That's
very shocking.
devastating.
Devastating. And again, my mission wasn't so much to put the film out there as to say, let's have a conversation and where can you put your energy? And so his daughter had introduced me to, I said, told her, where's a community-based organization? Because everything we do is run through schools.
Right.
Everything. I mean, the money, after school money, everything is run through these mechanistic systems. She introduced me to Elliot Washer. And Elliot had co-founded an innovative education organization called Big Picture Learning. And they actually worked in public schools in the most disadvantaged areas where 2 days a week the kids got out and did job shadowing, internships. They went out and
Like more hands-on.
Yes, and they were part of advisory circles. They don't call them teachers. They didn't have that. It's one student at a time. The students are the curriculum, the community's the classroom in public schools. Hugely successful.
Wow.
But you can't grow public schools. There's so much bureaucracy, and even situations where the school was great and it made all the other schools in the district look not so good. There's a lot of dynamics at play, political and otherwise, within our systems, and a lot of money that's has advantages that feed off of keeping the testing and the tutoring and the whatever in these systems. So Elliot had recognized this. There are about 285 schools around the world, about 100 here in the US, and said, even though that's great over 30 years, it needed to happen in the community where all children would have the opportunity. And don't forget, right now, we have about 30% of kids don't go to school. And then that's not even counting the high percentage of kids in school who are just disengaged. They're just moving through, and they're numbing themselves through it. And it's a tough thing to see. And Elliot had come up with this program called Outlearners, which was big picture learning without the school, where kids could be connected around their interests. The key point is you start with the interests. You don't start with, oh, we think finance is a good place or STEM is a good place. We start with who you are and what you're pulled towards, what you'd like to explore. And it could be something you care about, like the oceans. It doesn't matter. You start with the interest, and that's where, as Rumi says, once you start walking the way appears.
Right.
And so it's getting them out of their comfort zone. Discomfort is a huge part of these programs. It's having them be uncomfortable exploring just a little bit within the community of supportive adults who want to work with them and show them whatever it might be. It could be a trade, it could be a science, but they're with the community, how we learned throughout time, right? And so anyway, so he was telling me about this Outlearner program. I said, I love it. Let's do it. How do we create these in after school programs or parent organizations that can pull together and create the opportunities for kids to connect in their communities? We're actually doing it here in Orange County with Working Wardrobes. We're just starting Be Unbound. And so we called this new initiative together, Be Unbound. And so it will be available in Orange County. Right now, it's just to the groups that they're working with. Working Wardrobes is an amazing organization. People think it's just clothes, but really they have a huge workforce development arm. And we are talking about the difference between a job database, like an Indeed, okay, what's the job, and how important who you know is. So we call Be Unbound a relational database. So supportive adults, let's say you decided to sign up as a supportive adult and you wanted to talk about podcasting and starting a podcast and what you do. You could say that was your interest, and then as a student would be interested in, or a 14 to 24-year-old, it doesn't have to just be somebody in school, could say, I'm interested in that. And then there's an intermediary that would put the connection together. And if it's younger than 18, you would be background checked, et cetera. And then they can explore with someone who's actually doing it.
That is so neat. Yeah.
So this is exciting. And this is, we have about 30 pilots around the country, everything from boys and girls clubs to after school programs to makerspace to youth development. We're actually Tasmanian education government, which will be
Wow.
going in May. So recognizing this need, that this disconnect between this linear, content-driven testing that takes so much time and this need to break down those walls and involve what's happening right now that are changing, I mean, creating tremendous opportunity. What is so amazing when you think about it is we say, oh, if we just get our kid a skill and they get a job, they're going to be great. Okay, well, there's more to life than
Yeah.
being a utilitarian value for an economy. And um, and what we have to understand is right now, the median full-time job for people under 35 is 2.8 years. And that's actually going down. Why? AI, technology, people choosing not to be in part of these systems. These kids that I mentor, they're not doing it. They are not doing it. They are saying they'll do it for a year or two and then they're out. So you have this tremendous unemployment in a lot of these large organizations. At the same time, so we were in a period where we have these large institutional structures crumbling, what traditionally we had depended on. And we have these new systems that are just starting. So it's not quite fully developed and we're right in between, right? So it's very uncomfortable, but it's also exciting. You know, you doing what you're doing now, imagine. Even my three daughters have opportunity. You know, I went to the 9 to 5 job in the specific building that did a very specific thing. And now they can work remote part-time or
Things
all
have
the
changed
time.
so
Or
much.
yes, and so you build a life in a different way. And this younger group, Heather McGowan, does a lot of work with this and looking at the generational shifts. Whereas we used to find a job and we'd move for the job. Okay, oh my gosh, I got a great job in Cincinnati. I've got to move to Cincinnati
Right.
and then we'll find the community and all that. These kids are like, I want to know where my community is. I'm going to go where my community is. I'm going to go where the environment is that I want to be in, and I'm going to figure it out. And today, there's many ways for them to earn their living, right? You can do a full-time job. You could do a freelance. You can do a sharing economy. You could rent your car. You could rent your, I mean, when my daughter and son-in-law came here recently, they said, oh, Mom, can you give us a ride? We're going to pick up a car. And I'm thinking I'm going to Enterprise or Hertz or whatever. It was like 2 blocks away. There's some organization that, I mean, there's some app that you can rent somebody's car.
Are you serious? I didn't know
No.
about
Oh my
this.
gosh, it was crazy. And so I was like, okay, that is pretty interesting. So we have this sharing economy and that is completely shifting so much of what we're able to do and what we need. We can trade in ways that we weren't able before, right? I mean,
Right.
and we have the technology platforms that allow that connectedness to happen, right? And as people and communities that can find, you know, other people, for instance, if you're interested in regenerative farming or organic food or, you know, wellness things that don't have chemicals in it, you know, just this explosion of new ways and new forms. And so, and our kids, as they stay stuck in preparing for this end result, which is really just to get a college degree. And again, you know, I talk about in my book, it's called the leaky funnel. You know, if you take the number of ninth graders that actually start and get them all the way through to a college degree, it's only about 25% of them that actually end up with that 4-year coveted degree. And whether or not they make money on it for the cost of what that is, as you pointed out, the debt and
Yep.
but also for me, it's the human cost. It's that loss of the vibrancy of what we need in our communities as we're all discovering things and having the conversations and collaborating with each other to figure this out. So that's really where my work is in creating this community for those who are interested. Again, these parents that I spoke with yesterday, it's so, they're like, what? I'm like, don't look so far ahead. We're so future focused and we have no control. It's
We have no
changing so
control.
fast. And so I reference Alan Watts, who wrote the book, The Wisdom of Insecurity. A Message for the Age of Anxiety, which was written in 1951, right? That we became so industrialized, so product oriented, so output oriented, so efficiency oriented that we lost so much of what makes us human and really makes life worth living. Again, which is showing up as we are and answering to the things life demands of us. And so, really pulling it back, what is in your control today? How well do we live such transactional lives, even with our kids. Did you do your homework? What time's the game? Where are we going? Instead of that, how you doing today? What's going on? What are you
Yeah.
curious about?
Sometimes
What do
I
you
just feel
care
like there's
about?
no time for that, right? It's like they get
Exactly.
home and it's like, I have to go do my homework, and then you're making
Right.
dinner, and then they usually have like 15 minutes. Like, oh, I have 15 minutes to eat, mom. Like, I have 3 tests tomorrow. And it's like,
Yes, yes,
you're
yes,
trying to
yes.
squeeze in, like, okay, so how was your day? What did you do? How was your report? I mean, what grade did you get? I mean, it's not like, I mean,
No.
and I'm very strict about making sure we have that family dinner. Even
Yes, me
if
too.
it's 15 minutes, I'm like, I don't care if it's 15 minutes. We're going to sit down together. You're not taking your food to your room. I don't care what's going on. But unless
Yeah,
it's like a weekend, or even weekends are crazy. I mean, they have like mock trials and work. And I
I
mean,
know. And what is it
you've
really
been
preparing
there.
them for?
Yeah,
Yes, I have. I mean, I
exactly.
had three daughters, and really the focus was definitely on relationships, was on experiences and mentorships outside of school and home. I wanted them to be seen as something other than a test score or a grade or whatever, and you only do that when you're in a different environment, because in those school environments, it's a constant comparison.
Yep.
Right. And of course, there's a gazillion studies about envy and, self-loathing and things that come when you don't feel like you're measuring up to some external thing. And so many people say, well, these kids these days are not motivated, they're not whatever. And I'm thinking, but we train them to just sit back. We say, look, listen to what we tell you. Don't question your teacher. Don't eat when you're hungry. Don't go to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom, because a lot of schools will restrict when you can go and how you can go, because kids are trying to get out.
Yeah.
They need that break. And it is very, very hard. And so, yes, was in it with my kids, really pulled back. Dinner was sacred. Um, and then also having them spend time out in the community pursuing things that they were interested in. And it's interesting that looking at where they ended up, my older daughter is a speech therapist with special needs kids, and she volunteered with special camp for special kids for many years and fell in love with this population. Didn't know what she wanted to do with it, but thought, oh my gosh.
There
uh,
is your example of hands-on training
yes,
experience, and then that's how
yes.
she find out what she really likes.
Well, but unfortunately, what was interesting is that senior year, she had already applied to college. You do
Yeah.
that early on. And she's like, I'm not sure what. So she thought she needed to go through the occupation, I forgot which one, but it ended up being under the education umbrella, not under the science side of speech therapy. And she worked with the Shea Center and shadowed her last May before she's graduating. And there she discovers her love of speech therapy, but she'd already applied to college. Why aren't we doing this earlier? The things that Big Picture Learning does and that we do with Be Unbound is they start early, right at the beginning of ninth grade. And in some cases, you can do it earlier by having them explore things they're interested in. And it doesn't matter if
Yeah.
it's deep sea fishing. If a kid is out fishing and loving it and seeing, plastic in the ocean and suddenly is like, hey, I want to do something about this. This is something I care about. They discover it. So you don't know. Or
Yeah.
even just having something that feeds your soul as a hobby, it gives you so much more energy to do something else. My middle daughter was the creative one, the actress and the screenwriter, and she taught me a lot. I'm like, whoa, what is that? Because I was the businesswoman and and learned a lot from her. And so she ended up getting a job that is with a large, very famous corporation doing PR and but it's not a job she enjoys. But it allows her to write and do the things that she cares about. So I say, where your attention goes, your energy flows. Do your job. It's giving you your job becomes your means to an end to pursue this. Why, while the industry, of course, the whole film industry is, industry, as all industries are, we're going through tremendous change and upheaval, driven by many, many factors, including our humanness that's no longer agreeing to this.
Yeah.
We have literally and you see it in healthcare with doctors and nurses. We can't staff enough. They're like, we're not living that life where they're an input to an output. Educators leaving in droves, social workers leaving in droves. So we have these systems that don't even have the human capital
Yep.
to do what they need to do. And then my challenge is, what about our communities? What are we doing? So we're at this fork. I actually wrote a blog about a generation in between. So we have woken up to the fact that this institutional responsibility that we've turned over to these systems to prepare our kids, to take care of us health-wise, to handle problems, criminal justice, whatever, really not working. They're not working for anybody in the system and the
Yeah.
people going through. So now what? As these crumble, what do we build? And that's where the opportunity is and where the excitement is. And people like you talking about this in your community, experiencing it. Because for a long time, we did just follow that. Oh, that's what you do. And
Right.
once you get there, you get the piece of paper. It's not working. We're all
Yeah.
seeing it's not working. And as all you have to do is look at prescription medication, mental illness with not enough. I
Yes.
mean, there's so,
Depression, anxiety.
yes, it's our acknowledgement as humans that this is not how to live. And the craving, and COVID really, I think, highlighted this for so many people and a lot of students. This is not, I'm not doing this. And they see
Right.
the irrelevance, right? And yet we double down on the
Yeah.
on the irrelevance of content that takes away from who they know, how they learn to practice it, and most importantly, why they care about doing something, which is the meaning and purpose component. So we have a huge opportunity as
Yeah.
parents to come together. I mean, when I was doing kind of the alternative route, I was definitely the alternative weird parent. I mean, it's really funny because looking back, had I not been an older parent, it would have been really, really hard. And even with my kids, they'd be like, Mom, don't talk about education. I'm like, this is crazy. Is anybody thinking it's crazy? And people are like, you have to do it. They won't be successful in life. And I'm like, is anybody kind of seeing the adults? You have 75% of high school students disengaged, but you've got 80 or 85% of workers disengaged. I'm like,
There's like a problem right there.
I'm like, well, it's kind of something. But again, this comes back to our personal responsibility
Yeah.
to really look at this and decide, even if it's just an attitude shift, it doesn't mean it's just, okay, maybe I'm not going to spend so much time caring about whether they took the test or whether they, none of my kids were a 4.0, not one. I did not care about testing, nothing. They ended up in the world getting jobs with engineering salaries because of who they were. And they found it all through friends, no school, no nothing, helped them with that.
The community, the networking, the connections.
Yes, of people who knew them and who they knew. And I talk in the book about Julia Freeland Fisher from the Christensen Institute at Harvard, who talks about relationship mapping. And she's done a lot of work on this, where it's people say, well, I don't know who you know. I don't know the people. It's not about that level of person of who you know. It starts in your community. It starts in your family. Grandma's neighbor that may know somebody
Right.
who knows somebody. That's where you start. You start from where you are. And Big Picture Learning, their schools are in very disadvantaged communities. And when they first started flagship school called the Met in the poorest area of Providence, Rhode Island, they're like, how are you going to get mentors for these kids? Well, they did. And within a couple of years, they had thousands that had come forward. And so really, I think, and it's that, instead of saying, oh, financial services is where you want to be, do an internship, smush, here, you've got a kid. And the mentor is like, I don't have time for this. What do you, I got to do it. But the kid is not feeling like they're really learning
Yeah.
anything, right? But so it's about following their interest with an adult who wants to be with it. And we've built huge databases. We're doing it right here in Orange County right now for adults who say, yeah, I'm willing to do it. It doesn't have to be about your job. As I said, it could be about your hobby,
Right.
that you're tremendously interested in cultivating a garden. And, there's a youth who can work right with you. We have the ecology center, our kids can go and explore and
Yeah.
learn about things even young. So it's really about breaking down the walls
Yes.
and having them be exposed to the greater community, and coming from parents who grew up in that fear era of 2011, 2001, and every single thing happening in the world was on our TV, happening in our living rooms. We end up very fearful that, oh my gosh, but we're creating the fragility in our children that is not allowing them to really prepare for life, and prepare for life in the transitions, which has to happen with their understanding how to be part of ecosystems.
I think what you're doing is so inspiring, so powerful. As a former educator, I mean, just like you're saying, like, I'm also a mom of three kids, but also I was an educator, and I realistically left for the same reason. As much as I loved my job
Yes.
and I loved it, it was so rewarding working with the children. But I never forget there was one day that I was teaching in this classroom, and there was like leak in our ceiling, and literally I had kids, there was kids from all different perspectives, and they were young and they needed my guidance. And I had one that had like ADHD, one, I mean, just, and I'm trying to like balance it out and make the lesson of the day fun and inspiring. But at the same time, a lot of them are distracted by the leaking ceiling and the carpet. As I'm walking, you hear like the noise because the entire carpet is soaked. But my principal, I mean, they would come and monitor to check. You would have to write the standard of the day on the board,
Yes.
and
Yes.
they would check to make sure. So I just felt like the teaching moments were not allowed. We were in a great discussion and we were talking about something, and if someone came in to check on you and you were not following the standard that was given to you, you would get in trouble.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's not how, like, I want my classroom to be my classroom, and I want us to,
Yes.
because the kids engage the
Yes.
best when
Yes.
there's that moment where like they're all like really listening to you, they're really in tune to what you're saying. And I don't want to like stop that and be like, okay, now kids, we need to, talk about this standard because this is what's on the schedule.
Yeah, and it's not even how life works.
No.
I was reading an article that was talking about moral injury of so many people in the medical, in the education, and the social working areas. And how he described it was, he got into the practice of medicine because he cared about helping people. And suddenly, I mean, we have our emergency rooms that are being bought out by venture capitalists. You have to produce, and you have to see so many people in so amount of time. Again, it's a numbers
Like,
game where there's an
you have 2 minutes
input
to
to
tell a
output.
doctor, like, okay, this is
Right.
what's wrong with me.
But they're looking at their screen. They're not even looking
Yeah.
at you,
Yep.
right? So because they're having to put all the data in, and we've lost this connection, and doctors are feeling it. They're having to fight the insurance companies when they say, I want this medication. And my daughter sees it with speech therapy. She's like, oh my gosh, mom, here's this kid and he really needs therapy. And yet they say you can see him 12 times, and she sees him for the 20 minutes or whatever, 50 minutes of time. And she's like, this is like an assembly line. I mean, am I really, truly, effectively changing? And it's the same with teachers. Teachers, I admire teachers. I mean, of course, they're needed, but they're not needed to follow somebody else's standardized thing. They're needed to share who they are. Even Viktor Frankl, when he was touring the country with colleges right after he published Man's Search for Meaning, so this is in the 60s, and the professors say, these kids, they're, suicidal, they're committing suicide, they're doping themselves. What's going on? How do we teach them values?
Okay.
And he said, values can't be taught, they must be lived. If you love your science, teach them the love of science, teach them who you are, share that. That's how. That's why one of my first things in the chapter 4, where I talk about what parents can do, let's do that. That's why I'm so inspired by women and the gathering of women. I mean, we've this mistake of this nuclear family where we're supposed to be perfect at everything and handle everything outside of having a tribe or a clan or a neighborhood or whatever that can help support
Right.
this raising of children. And it's just we're exhausted. And so Sunia Luther, who's a friend of mine, she's since passed, sadly, but she was a Yale researcher who did a study, Who Mothers Mommy, because she found that the resilience of children and the well-being depended on the health and well-being of the primary caregiver, which is usually the mom. So that's why I advocate for moms to support each other, and also women really encouraging each other to be and do what we need to do, and that we encourage each other to be out there, just like you're doing with your podcast, to do that. You know, we don't need to focus. Our kids can find their way if we allow them
Right.
to go out and discover, and they'll find mentors. My kids all had mentors wherever they went, and they learn to deal with adults, they learn to deal with peers, and they're not so defined by a single stat. You know, when you're at a job, and one daughter was a hostess at a very busy pancake house. And, you know, people were upset if they're, you know, how much longer, you know, there'd be
Yeah.
2 hour waits, and she's having to check the bathroom and do all of this. But she learned, you know, how to deal with people. And she wasn't, no one cared about her grade or her test score or whatever. She was just in this community working at figuring out how to do her job. And that was a break from people looking at her as somebody who was just a single number, which, by the way, is falling by the wayside anyway. And there's a lot of people out there coming up with new ways where we look at portfolios rather than looking at single numbers, transcripts, because that says nothing. It says
Right.
nothing.
I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm in the midst of everything. My older daughter has graduated. My middle daughter is her junior year. It's a very tough year. Like I see, and my heart goes out to her. I see the constant stress that she's under. I just feel
Yep.
like she can't relax. Even like just like going through the process of just learning and enjoying. And it's just like the year is going by so fast. And it's like all these checklists and all these things. But it, like you're saying, when you're in that environment, and we unfortunately are in that environment,
Yes.
we
Yes.
establish ourselves there. So once
Yes.
you do that, as much as I talk to her and I say, it doesn't matter what college you go, it doesn't
No.
matter. When she's in that, like, she's like, Mom, what are you talking? Like, she is the one who is like putting so much pressure on herself.
Yes.
No matter what
Absolutely.
I tell her, it's like
Yep.
she doesn't even understand. She's like, oh, you don't even understand what I'm saying. You know,
I
my son, who's like a 13-year-old, he'll be like this summer, he insisted that he wanted to take like a geometry class to get ahead. And I was like, no, I was sad. I was going into eighth grade. I'm like, this is summer. This is a time where you can relax. Like, don't. He's like, but Mom, like all the other kids are doing it. So
Yep.
then I'm going to fall really behind. I'm like, how can you fall
Yep.
behind? You're taking a geometry class in high school and you're in middle school. But that's the pressure these kids are under. And it's really hard. So with that being said, I mean, I think a lot of people might argue, I'm sure you've had that conversation where they're saying that's how we've been all trained, right? That we're
Yes.
saying standardized education is the best path to college. And if we go to college, the kids are going to get the staple job. They're going to get that financial stability. They're going to be successful and they're going to live happily ever after,
Yes, I
right? So
know. And we're all saying it not working.
right?
Yes.
That's something
Yes.
that's been like ingrained in so many of our, parents. And
Yes.
that's why we have all these, I mean, the college counselors that are charging so much money and the tutoring, and it's like you hear your friend has that same tutor, so you have to go get that same tutor. it's this horrible, vicious cycle. So how would you respond to the view that this financial success is the pinnacle of a good life and that our education system is a guaranteed ticket to living it?
Okay, so this is where you don't argue it. I mean, like really, I just say, well, how's it working for you? How's your home life? How's it in your community with the kids who have graduated? I mean, we're all seeing it. It's just cognitive dissonance. We don't want to see it because in many ways, letting someone else handle it, check the box or whatever has been fine. And I think that I was in it too. I had it with my kids, and my kids wanted to belong. So of course,
Yeah.
at various levels, they were wanting to belong. But yeah, this is where it requires a working with them. You know, again, I chose not to be the policewoman with my kids in so many things, but really to challenge some of their choices. One of my daughters called me when she had taken a test, and she's just telling me, I feel so stupid, Mom. I feel so dumb. All my friends, you know, they're very black and white thinking, all or nothing.
Yeah.
All my friends are whatever. And I said, oh, yeah, I can understand. And I said, but really, you're not a number. You're not this. And she's like, I know, Mom, but you don't know. This is what, you know, the whole thing. And so I
Right,
said,
of
okay,
course.
then do you want to change schools? Do you want to go somewhere else? And again, we had done alternative education. I said, I'll do something different if you want to do. No, Mom, this is where my friends are. I said, so good. So now you get to learn a really important lesson. Can you be you and be worthy of being you in an environment that wants you to be the same as everybody else? Because if you learn that, you got a good skill. And of course, they're
Yes.
young, but I was just with her. I just advocated. And I had a woman who called me telling me, my son's in his senior year. He was at a public school and he was getting D's and F's, and you know, really he just needed to get through that last year. And so she wanted him to go to counseling. And I'm like, he's not the one that needs counseling. We got to counsel the school that's trying to make him be. I go, you know, if you're in a public school and you're getting D's, I mean, you're working hard. He's screaming at you saying, I'm in distress. And of course, he was doing addictive behaviors and it's whatever. I go, get on his team. Say, I hear you. This is obviously not working. Do you want to leave school? Do you want to get a GED? You know, put out the whole thing. You know, I'll tell you, getting a GED at this stage is a lot harder than just making it through. And I said, but if he knows you're on his team
Right.
and you're going to help figure it out with him, then it was different. And so it ended up that he wanted to go to prom and he wanted to do some of the social aspects of school. And so there was a hook for him to at least show up. But that relief valve that everybody wasn't trying to be making him when he just
Against them
knew.
and the
And
pressure.
highly creative kids there's so many creative kids. And I'm telling you, this environment for creative kids is tough. And, you know, again, 30% of kids didn't go back to school, and there's a whole lot that are disengaged. So when you think of the number of kids that this actually is working for, and at what they give up to be the people pleaser so that they don't, and that what they need to do to belong, and then they go out in the world and they're disconnected from these very bubble-like environments, and they have no idea how to
Yeah.
pay attention to who they are and where to go and how to create the communities wherever they go, which they will be doing through all these multiple transitions that happen for lots and lots of reasons. Because that's, you know, personal pandemics happen all the time. So anyway, so he ended up making it through and graduating. You know, he did enough. You know, they worked with the teachers, and the teachers were like, how do we help him get through? And
Because at that point, it's like they need to be seen and they need to be heard. And
right,
when you offer that advice for that connection to happen, then it was like someone is hearing me. I'm
right,
not so trapped. And so that
right,
just changed the whole path.
right, because it wasn't him that's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, and too often we diagnose the child like this. When I was at the public school and we were in a meeting with parents of a sophomore kid who refused to get out of bed and go to school. He's like, these 80-minute blocks were killing him. And mind you, at my program for school counseling, where we were all doing this practicum, one of my fellow students' job was to watch kids who looked out the window. I mean, oh my gosh. And then we say, well, now they have ADHD, they have ADD, they have,
See,
I
that's
mean,
the whole problem. The moment that there's an issue, it's like, no,
yes,
this child, we need to diagnose this child and
yes, we
give
need,
this child
yes,
lots of medication.
yes, so that they can make it
Yep.
through. And when we look at that going, oh my gosh, why they know this is irrelevant. They know it's not working. They don't want to be part of this. And yet we're like, something's wrong with you because
Yeah.
you're not measuring up,
So
as if
sad.
every single person could be good at math, science, English, and what it costs to be good at all those things in time and energy. And if so it's not about really discussing or arguing, because I can give you a gazillion statistics about valedictorians and everything else. It's really about touching the heart. How is it
Yeah.
working for you? How is it working for your family? Now, for you, how do you shift? Because the only control we have, this is why I called it
Yep.
parenting from the passenger seat. I don't care who it is in your life, whether it's your husband, your mother, your child, your sister, your friend. We can never drive a person's life. We can never, everybody drives their own. So really, we're in the passenger seat. It's very scary going through those DMV things.
Yes. Oh
But
God.
but we are there. And how do we honor that, thinking long term, that we want them to navigate life? And so in some ways, acquiescing to what this pressure is teaching them to not, so that they go in the work world, they're not having it. They're not, I'm not giving up myself anymore, and my middle daughter, who worked for a Los Angeles company, was like, my tribe is in New York right now. I want that experience of living in New York. But the company said, no, you can't work remote. And so I told her, I said, look, I support you. You got to support yourself. I'm not supporting your lifestyle, but you can find a way to earn a living and figure it out. But you figure it out, but you follow your community, right? And some people are like, oh no, she's got such a good job. She's got health insurance, big company, big, great money. For her, wasn't even it. She was craving the experiences of life, which during your 20s, go for it.
Yeah.
Right? Go live on a commune. I don't care. I mean, find things that pull you in a way that sometimes once you get those responsibilities, why do they have to do it so young? Why do kids have to go to school straight from being in this bubble into another bubble that literally these colleges are in the same input to output business model
Yes.
that we have? And let me tell you, the kids, I mean, I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of colleges, good colleges. No one's watching the shop. Adjunct professors, they don't even get insurance. They're working other jobs. They're not able to be there, even if they, and it's, these people are good people. I'm not saying they're not good people. But the way the system is
The system has
oriented,
changed.
it's a conveyor belt, and it's transactional. And they have their standardized whatever, and they want you in. They're going to add all the fluff and bells and whistles,
Yep.
but it is not mature kids for the most part who are going. You have these kids who haven't had these life experiences that suddenly have all this freedom and know, when we went to school, it was just, there was tenured professors. They had office hours. You had, I mean, you didn't have as many kids. Like, don't forget, now they take a
Oh, right.
two-bedroom, and because the more money they have to have.
Yes.
So it's this business. I look at it as a business model
Yeah.
that uses human capital to be able to sustain itself, and we're relational. So how do we create that in between? So all my kids chose college. I offered for all of them not to go to college. My nephews didn't go to college. Both of them could, but chose not to. Both of them make six-figure salaries, working for companies they went up in, and they own houses, and there's many paths, but we have a status thing, especially for families where the parents are highly
Yes.
educated. They perceive that. Even when you look at your life and we look at our community and we think, is this healthy?
Right.
You know, I'm not seeing a healthy community,
Yeah.
and we're all craving it. We're all craving
We
it.
are
When I
all
put something,
definitely.
yeah, when I put something out to gather women, especially, which is one of my loves, is women to gather together to support each other during this time. I mean, they answer the call in droves. I mean, we are looking for this. And
Yes.
I think so that's why the answer is yes, this is this environment. Okay. And I told my kids, yes, you have to play the game if this is what you want to do. But how do you do it by still being yourself within that? Because that's what we all have to do, right?
And that's
And
how we stay happy. Like
yeah,
once you lose that, that's what I think we all experience as we age, which is what I was going to talk about next. We've talked about this a lot back and forth. I mean, education, what you're doing is incredible, and I'm in awe. And I have your book right here, and I will have the links in there, and I suggest everyone gets it and purchase it so they understand what Pam's movement is all about. But on another note, you and I have discussed a lot of labels often given to women as we age. That's another big topic that we like to talk about.
yeah.
How do you feel about the aging process? And do you feel like you are I mean, I feel like you are, but do you feel like you are at an age where you can fully embrace who you are and enjoy the journey of aging gracefully while living life to the fullest? Because that's what we want our kids to do at the end, right?
Yes,
Isn't that the
yes.
whole message that we're trying to give to them?
Yes. Okay. As I said, I'm 65. My 60s have been the best period of my, I mean, all periods have good and bad, but yes, I've been able to step in, especially challenging myself to write the blog, put things out there, and really to speak out. That's not meant to tell other people what to do, but to share a perspective. And so for me, and then of course, seeing how important it is for young people to have older people to inspire them to look at,
Yeah.
wow, look at the shifts. I mean, I'm not doing one
I'm
single
sure
thing
your
I planned.
daughters are so inspired by you.
They are very proud. I mean, I will
Yes.
say my daughters, again, from don't talk about education to like, Mom, I love what you're doing. It's been a hilarious journey. But no, but it is. And they were my teachers and they were my motivation to say, what kind of life do I want for my children if I am saying live in a construct? Right? Live in a construct of not necessarily being you, but then you got all the stuff. Who you are becomes so important. But I love aging because you're allowed to let things unfold. At a certain point, you realize that life happens and there's a lot we can't control. It just does. But we do have this power to respond. And once we do that, it's it's fulfilling. And again, happiness is not the goal because happiness is an emotion. Sometimes you're happy, things happen, you can't be happy. It's about fulfillment, but it's not lollipops and rainbows. I mean, sometimes I'm like getting myself into things. When I did the audiobook for my book, I wanted to throw up every single day. I'm playing Helen Reddy, I Am Woman, blasting it as I'm driving there, just going, I could do this. And, so it hasn't been like, oh, it's all great, graceful. I mean, I fumble through so many things, but I'm the pull of what I feel is important to share is so strong that I have to quiet that part of myself down. So graceful is probably a stretch.
Was there like a certain time where you found the flow in your step and like this boldness and this courage to kind of, were you always like this? Or was there like a certain time, like certain age that you just felt like, no, this is my time. This is where I'm going to embrace who I am. And I'm going to be very blunt and bold and honest about everything I believe in.
Yes, I would say for me, I drank the Kool-Aid through my 20s, went through the 30s of the, dark night of the soul of what am I going to do now? I believe this. Now it's not here. I want to be, and then the 40s, I had young kids, so it was kind of survival mode, right? And also the watching of these systems try to take my children and try to tell them who they should be. And that is the moment that the
It
spark
shook
came
you
in.
up, I think.
Yeah, it was Mama Bear got poked. And I was like, hell no. I know that relationships, I know that who they are cannot be standardized. I know that the world is changing faster than I can protect them with. And again, because of my own experience, I didn't believe a job was going to be it can be, it's not to say it won't, but that job was going to be the cornerstone of their life that made them happy and fulfilled and whatever. Again, it can be, it's
It
not to
can't,
say,
right.
but the likelihood that that job, I mean, even look at a doctor who goes through medical school, does all this, and then ends up in a managed care system where they can't even do, or a teacher who gets into the profession because they love to share the love of learning with children. And yet they can't, because the measurement of those children and their
Yep.
own job security comes from performing to these tasks. And so it's a
That
trade-off.
was me. Exactly.
And so I had this period in my 40s, which were, okay, this isn't wow. And my kids, I'm trying to, figure out how to navigate. And then it was really in my 50s that as they were going through high school and as they were going, that really I thought, I can't stay quiet. I have got to step up. I have got to do something. And I still didn't know. I always say that there's this fog when you kind of feel a pull, like something's not right. What can I do? I don't know what to do. I just know it's not right. And again, everything that I'm doing, I think once you align, I wrote a blog about this with a quantum physicist and Viktor Frankl that was talking about, the quantum physicist was saying that in this quantum field, we each have a frequency that's unique to us. And we have 50 trillion cells constantly moving, the energy of our bodies, and the heart cell knows not to be the, liver cell, intelligence beyond anything, so unique to who we are. And he was saying, and this is what Viktor Frankl says, how do you do this step by step? You don't go into the future because we don't know what is. And by the way,
Right.
we're co-creating the future right now. Okay. So we listen, we intuitively know. How often have you thought, I knew that, I just didn't trust myself? So you intuitively do the best you can. Something pops out and like when I had to quit my job or when I left my marriage, when I decided I can't be who I am in this context. And by the way, we did a collaborative divorce. Our family still spends holidays together. It was just trying to figure out a way that I could do these things, that I was
Yeah.
tremendously pulled inside a traditional concept or construct of a marriage and a lifestyle that appeared very nice, right? And to trade that for me, my authenticity of what I felt I needed to do and share in the world, and honored that we just had different values. And there was not a wrong or whatever, it was different values. And I wanted to model for my children that you honor that authentic contribution that you make. So I think we feel this pull. So you listen, you trust it, even if it seems crazy. Doing a blog, crazy. Doing films, crazy. Leaving my marriage, crazy. Leaving, jobs, crazy. But I listened. And the most important thing is to act, which we have to, it's one thing to sit there going, oh, I can do that. That's why Viktor Frankl wasn't so much on mindfulness and meditation for hours. He was on contemplation, but the discovery happens when you actually take the steps and put the energy out there to do it.
So the
And
three things were you started with
listen,
listen,
trust,
trust, and
act,
act.
and repeat every moment. Listen, trust, act, repeat. And then in doing that, life unfolds in an alignment, and synchronicity happens when you're aligned. That's what the quantum physicist was talking about.
Yeah.
I can say from my own personal experience, crazy how synchronicity, the right people, the right money, the right whatever shows up
Yep, the flow, because you're just going the
whenever
right way. You're
and then you
going,
get in a flow, and it doesn't mean you don't get stuck at certain points. It was
of
interesting
course.
when I knew I wanted to write a book for parents based on my experience and um, my relationship with Be Unbound and different ways of doing things. I I thought, oh, I could take my blogs, and so I do this intellectual outline, and everything's all good, and couldn't write. I was writer's block. I'm like, I had the outline, I had the everything. What's wrong? Well, because I was writing from my head, not my heart.
Yep.
And I threw it out, walked the beach, I'd run home. Suddenly it was flowing out. I couldn't write. I would wake up at 4 o'clock every morning, run to the computer. I'm like, I don't even know what came through. It was amazing, that experience of flow. And then all of a sudden it'd be noon or whatever it might be. And then there was days that's like, what am I going to say? Oh, and then it comes. And so the whole thing was just honoring that flow of really listening, trusting it, and then putting it on the paper, and then away you go, and then trusting all the frustrations and things that happen with that self-publishing, and then having I don't do a lot of promotion of the book and all of that. It's kind of an organic spread
Right.
as people read it and become interested, because I have so many other things that are coming.
Your hands are full.
They are, and it's funny because my first book, which was I wrote with my best friend of 45 years, The Inspiring Wisdom of Viktor Frankl, was a very small book, 21 reflections, self-reflections, because you can't tell a how-to. It's all about things that was really to talk about the essence of Viktor Frankl's philosophies in a modern context. And so Beacon Press, the publishers of Man's Search for Meaning, are now publishing that book in August as a hardcover gift book, and it'll be distributed by Penguin Random House. So crazy, like really. I mean, that I just wrote because the film, we were getting ready to do the film. We had established the Viktor Frankl Institute of America with Viktor Frankl's grandson and my best friend, Maura. And it was like, well, we have to have content for modern audiences that is just lets them get without having to read. And a lot of his work is dense because it was written for a certain time. And he was a medical doctor, brilliant, but not your everyday reading.
Right.
And so.
No, I have it right. I mean, it makes it so much easier when it's right there. It's like easy to just pop in and kind of like reread a page that you just need
Yes.
like a reminder, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's your own context. It was like even when we were talking with Beacon Press about what the format would be for the hardcover gift book and how we would incorporate it, we're so trained to do a how-to, right? And yet it's unique to us. What might work for me won't work for you, won't work for, and that was the interesting thing, I think, with a lot of the parents as well, is talking to them going, well, it worked for me. My mom made me go to college and it really worked out great. I'm like, that's fine. Your child might be different, maybe not. The era certainly is different. We're so rosy glasses that if you could just get to college, somehow that's going to prepare you. And of course, we can show you in so many ways it's not, but it still is that holy grail for so many people. And especially families who have kids being the first in their family to go to college. At the same time, the world's creating so many different things. So I honor all of it. And it's really about passenger seat parenting our children. So that means that we're taking them into consideration and not just what we think is best. I mean, my daughters have taught me, like, the things they're doing are nothing I would have thought would have been what I thought that they would be doing. They just discovered it, but they own it. I mean, my two daughters in New York live in walk-ups, 6th-floor walk-ups, no elevator, no dishwasher disposal. I mean, crazy given the California lifestyle they did. But they own it and it's theirs.
It's so good for them.
But we did that. We had to struggle. And so the minute we try to create a world that only has one side of the balance sheet, that, oh, we do everything right, you've taken away what makes us human, that makes us learn, is this meandering, this trial and error that happens that we need to have our children know how to do. And not always be, but those messages are so important when things don't work out. It's as important that they do a job saying, not me.
Yep.
Because then when they find something that says, that's me.
And they're brave enough to actually admit it.
Yes. Yeah. And the apathy and the boredom that we have when you're not doing, you just kind of turn everything over. Fine. This is what you want me to do. I'll do my, versus being engaged, like me writing a book, it was like in the flow. I mean, whoa, it was just great. And we can get into the flow when you can find it. And sometimes you're not. Same thing when I was writing my blog, I had a lot. And then now I don't write very often in the blog. I mean, it's these ebbs and flows of life that you're
Yeah.
called to in periods of exhaustion and periods of peeling things away. I wrote a blog called The Art of the Pivot, how important it is that we let things go. There was a time I was going to train moms on being mentors, for kids, on helping guide them through this transition. And but then I thought, I don't want to run a company training moms. I work with kids, so I still just ad hoc mentor kids with people who find my way to their or find their way to my door, and I only work with kids who can call me, not their parents. And so really it's about that, but we have to give that life experience and let them choose. And there's so many ways to do college if it needs to stair step now.
Mhm.
It's all out in multiple ways, but only 22% of college students do internships. So they go all these years, all that money, not seeing the dramatically changing world. So my encouragement to parents is make sure your child has one foot in real world learning alongside traditional education. Traditional education's still there,
Right.
but they need that context and application
Yes.
in the real world and the relationships that come with that. And then when they're in college, if they do go straight to college, again, trying to find something where they get out in the world, even work. I mean, all my kids I had, work or volunteer or do something alongside what they're, so they weren't so in the bubble. And that, different kids, different things. They push back different times. I had to challenge myself to back off on some things, especially as they get older, really. You have to allow them the muddling through. And of course, they look back now at certain things. It's really fun to have kids who are young adults, and you're just like,
That's
and then
amazing.
other things where they taught me, and I'm like, okay, you're
We
right.
learn so much from our kids. I mean, Pam, just listening to you today, I have to say, you are such a role model. One, as your parenting skills. I mean, the fact that you've just opened the world for your kids and gave them so many choices, gave them a voice from the beginning. That's really inspiring. I don't see a lot of that happening in today's society. Your wisdom, your philosophy, but most of all, your passion. Like when you talk about this, your book, I can see how passionate you are about changing this system, about helping our kids, about changing the generations of kids to come. And
Mhm.
I really admire and I admire
Thank
you. And
you.
I've learned so much. And
Likewise.
I really hope that our listeners are doing the same thing. And then in addition, my podcast is to inspire women 40 and older to just, it's not too late. You can do anything. And you are a prime example of this. I mean,
Hmm.
look at you. You are aging gracefully and beautifully, but most important of all, you are aligned, you know your values, and you're passionate about living a very fulfilled and authentic life and you're making a difference along the way doing all of that.
Well, I
So
think,
it's
yeah,
like check, check, check.
thank you. No, but I think the whole thing is we don't change the system from inside the system. We change it from building strong communities,
It's all
supportive
about
networks,
community.
and honoring each other as we're going through it. I mean, I think my book is a validation as for people like you who look at that and go, yes, maybe I can put some numbers to it
Yeah.
or perspective, but hopefully that brings you support. And then there's a community of other moms that are with you that say, okay, let's challenge each other to be who we are, to model that for our children. And I'm sure your children are very proud of you with the things that you're doing. Say, I'm going to put myself out there and show we are in this second prime, as my
Yes.
friend Gretchen Leonard, or a third
Love
prime or
Gretchen.
whatever. Yes, I mean, so I'm grateful for you for taking the time to, number one, read my book. I'm always so honored when people do it, and then be interested enough to have the conversation.
Of course. Well, and I think we can talk for hours. We're going to have to make this into 2 episodes, but in summary, we must teach our children that their character matters far more than their grades, which is what we've been talking about this whole time. Our responsibility as parents and caregivers is to love them unconditionally, not just for their achievements, but who they are at this very moment. Authentic love is the greatest gift we can offer. It nurtures self-worth and confidence. pushing children to excel in subjects they don't really care about or complete tasks that make them feel meaningless and that it doesn't really truly educate them. Why have we allowed their worth in society to be reduced to a letter, a number, or a piece of paper? Life's meaning is far more profound than this. Today, Pam's wisdom and experience have reminded us that aging brings courage and insight. We must pass this gift on to our children by teaching them to value themselves for who they are and to honor their values. We can help them grow into adults who, like Pam, will live bravely and authentically. And I was going to read one section from this, the inspiring wisdom of Viktor Franklin, because I just felt like it was a perfect way to end. And it's responsibility. Let me get my glasses. While we enjoy freedom, it may well be that we are not yet sufficiently aware of our responsibility. If we were, we would soon find that there's plenty of meaning and purpose lying in wait for us all. Just think of the underprivileged parts of the world, of the underdeveloped people and nations. Think of the needs and the opportunities. Think of man's planet-wide responsibilities, and no one will ever have to complain of lack of meaning or lack of purpose. Our ability to choose what we do in life is what gives us freedom. Frankl repeatedly emphasized that we are not free from conditions, but we are always free to choose how we respond to them. Because we are free, we are responsible for who we become and how we address the issues that impact our families, communities, and the world. And I just felt like this was so important and so deep because, listeners, it is our responsibility, and it's one person at a time, and it's one community at a time. Pam, is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
No, I mean, I think find your community. I mean, I'm so inspired. When I was kind of going on my alternative path, there weren't a lot of people and a lot of options. Today, I would say that's so different. And so more and more people are waking up, and this is where, especially the moms, joining together to support each other in looking at this and saying, okay, we have to acknowledge the system is where our children are, and but what can we do? What can we do to enhance ourselves, model, have responsibility, and enjoy? So I will just say, life is so much more fun when you're in community and when you're sharing who you are and you have other people reflect back to you that's a very valuable thing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All the links will be in my show notes. Thank you, Pam, again for being on Female Fluence.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for tuning in today to Female Fluence. Together we can influence and motivate other mind-like females. Your job is to feel alive, be in control, and always be true to your own self. Please don't forget to subscribe so you can continue feeling inspired. All the links and notes from this episode will be posted on my website, femalefluence.com. Don't forget to also follow me at Female Fluence on both Instagram and Facebook. Lastly, if you are in need of a woman empowerment life coach to help you identify the barriers that keep you from living the life you seek, please send an email to info@femalefluence.org. Remember, my friends, don't just exist, but live your life to the fullest. I'm your host, Pearl Mashur. Until we talk next time.